Welcome back to another episode of Morning Coffee. I'm your host, Rick Alexander. You guys can interact with me or follow me at @RickAlexander_ or at the Morning Coffee Podcast on Instagram. Now, if you're getting a lot from this show, if it's changing your life or even changing the way that you look at your life, it would mean the world to me if you would head to iTunes and give us a 5-star review so that we can continue to climb the charts and get this information to more and more people. Over the last year and a half, I've focused my work on the story that we tell ourselves about our lives. Your entire life is a bit of a story that you're telling yourself. And if you could tell yourself a different story, you could probably change your life quite a bit. And so I did that work for the release of my newest book, which is coming out in early 2020. But getting excited for that release, I actually wanted to go through a lot of the information that I had learned, a lot of my notes, and synthesize it into maxims, which is what we're getting into today. I've got 21 maxims to maximize your life, and what these are is just things that seem to be true about the human experience. And if you could understand how they are true, you could understand how they could change your life. And so if you go to rickalexander.com, what you're going to find is if you click on articles, the maxim of the day is going to be posted, whatever the last maxim was, and it's also going to have journal entries and thought experiments in there so that you can figure out how to apply these things to your own lives. And so a bit of an interactive experience. So throughout the next year, through my speaking, through my book release, and through these maxims, I'm excited to see how this information can really change the world and change your world if you give it an opportunity to. Carl Jung said, in order for a tree to reach its branches to heaven, it must first reach its roots to hell. So the thing that I want you to understand today is that this life is both. This life is polarities. There's goods and there's bads. There's successes and there's achievements and there's failures and there's sorrow and there's all of the things, right? And then life is fundamentally all of the things. So you're going to navigate all of these different polarities on your experience. The thing that you must understand, perhaps one of my most often recited messages, is that as a human being, you are everything. You contain the full spectrum of human emotion. So just because you like being happy and you don't like being sad doesn't mean you're any less sad or you're any more happy, right? You just create these divisions and these walls in your own life to try to cling to what makes you happy and let go of what makes you sad. But you're still going to go through either of them regardless, right? And so when it comes to beating ourselves up or dealing with something like imposter syndromes, one of the narratives that we tell ourselves is that we're a failure or stupid or incompetent. And so I'm sure that you can look back in your own life and you can think about times where you're wanting to step into something bigger, right? You're wanting to start a business or start a relationship, or you're being invited to live in some different way. And then I would ask you, what comes up for you when you face those things? Because you need to understand what comes up for you, because what comes up for you is the thing that decides whether or not you actually get to the success that you want or whether you don't. And so what I mean by that is you're always going to have ideas for how you want to live your life. And a lot of times those ideas are going to be really great. You have ideas probably that you've been floating around forever for things you want to do, businesses you want to start, places you want to visit, things you want to travel to, like this whole life that you want to live. It sort of sits in the back, and there's a gap that exists between where you are and where you want to be. And the thing that fills that gap is the story that you tell yourself about where you are and where you want to be. And so if you tell yourself that you're a failure or that you're stupid or you're incompetent, then you create more division in order for you to get through, right? Because it's harder to get through the gap if you are incompetent or if you're a failure. The thing that I would like to explain to you is, like I started out this message talking about this idea that you're everything. You contain the full spectrum of human emotion. And so when it comes to beating yourself up or dealing with these, whatever comes up for you, understand you definitely can be, but what else is true, right? And so think about this. We have this idea that, let's say you want to start a business or something like that. I always use that example because I feel like it's one of the easiest, just as far as like wanting to step into something new. It's something I know really well. I know all of the fears that pop up when you want to start your own business and you start telling yourself, well, I'm a failure. And part of you is telling you that. The part of you that's telling you that is the part of you that wants to keep you small. And so what you might find is you question a dream 1,000 times, because if you keep questioning it, you don't actually have to go after it. It kind of keeps you small. The thing that I would understand, the rebuttal that you need to the part of yourself that would rather keep you small when you know that something bigger is calling you, is that that's definitely true. It certainly can be, but what else is true? Because look, you definitely can be a failure. That's, it's like, it's stupid to deny reality. And I think sometimes that's what we do, right? Sometimes we come up against these feelings of failure or inadequacy in some way, and we try to tell ourselves, I am enough, I am more than enough, I am this, I am that. And it's like, yes, that's true. Everything is true, right? And that's what I'm trying to sort of get here with this idea that life is everything, because you definitely can be a failure. You definitely can be incompetent, right? You definitely can be stupid about certain things. You can definitely be uninformed about certain things. And that's just true for everybody. And so you have to learn to disempower the voice that tells you you can't do something when you decide that you want to do something. Because that voice is coming from the part of you that would rather continue to play small. It's comfortable where you're at. Even if comfort's not serving you, it's okay. It's keeping you there. And so your subconscious doesn't have any idea of why you would want to thrive in the future. It only knows safety now, and so it makes decisions to keep you safe now. And so that might mean feeding you this narrative that you're a failure in order to keep you where you're at. The way that you rebut that failure is to say, well, in regards to failure, you certainly can be, right? I certainly can be if you're talking to yourself. But what else is true? Have you not had successes? I mean, most likely, like most of the clients that I talk to in the Clarity Academy, for example, that are dealing with this fear of failure are articulate, they're pretty, they're smart, they're capable, they're all of these things, right? But they're focusing on the one that's holding them back. And I think what they tend to do is they say, well, like, I always screw things up. And then they say something along the lines of, but that's just reality. I just have to face that. And it's like, no, that's part of reality. And that's part of what you have to face. But what else is true? Because you're also really successful. You're also really articulate. You're also really capable. And if you're none of those things, if you have resilience, then it doesn't actually matter what else you have, right? Because if you have resilience, you are the kind of person that will eventually succeed. And so understand that you're not clinging to reality by reliving past moments where you failed or where you've come up short or where things haven't worked. You're reliving part of your past reality. You've succeeded in many things. You're doing the human thing, which is really fucking tough sometimes, right? And in all of that, everything that's ever tried to stop you, everything that's ever tried to kill you has failed, because you're still here and you're still listening to this. And so you still have a message to give. There's still some part of you that is looking for its place in the world, right? There's still some part of you that's looking for the highest expression of yourself, so to speak. And we have to be careful that we don't empower the voices that keep us from that highest expression of ourselves, because the reality is, whenever you tell yourself a story about some part of your life, that's just your view from your point. But the reality is that there's a million things that are also true about that exact same situation. That's the paradoxical nature of reality itself. That's what a lot of my whole new book is about, this fact that we're not in an either or scenario, we're in a both and scenario. Humans live in this paradoxical nature, and we're not really in opposition to our failures. It's just that our failures are part of the story. Our success is also part of the story. And you can tell yourself whatever, and you can lean into whatever. Again, time is still going to pass. You're still going to pass through that time, but you get to decide, where do you put your focus, and what are the things that you tell yourself in the interim, and then the things that you tell yourself begin to shape the quality of your experience. And so as you think about whatever it is that you want to, right, think about the thing that you have in the back of your head right now that you want to do, that you know you should do, that you're just not doing. Think about that, and think about what comes up for you when you decide to step into that. And then ask yourself if that's the only thing that's true. If that thing is holding you back, you've got to ask yourself, is that all that's true? Or are there other things that are true that would also help me to succeed? Because if there are, well, then I guess at that point, success actually becomes a choice, doesn't it? It's no longer, am I good enough for? It's everybody is everything. Everybody's good enough and not good enough for things, right? And as you get into the nuances of certain things, there are other limiting factors like genetics and things that come into play depending on where you're looking to do. But most people haven't maximized their own genetic potential enough to even know whether they would fall short of some genetic predisposition or genetic barrier to entry for something. And so you got to become the absolute best version of you before you could judge yourself based on anything, because chances are you're actually far more capable than even you believe. And that's, again, the gift of potential. You step into the world in a forthright manner, meaning you learn the things that you need to learn, you shoulder the things that you need to shoulder, and in doing so, you're gifted with more ability, and then you become more capable, and you continue to do that, and so you have no idea where the highest version of you might actually be. In regards to failure, you certainly can be, but what else is true? I love you. Have an amazing day. We'll talk tomorrow on Morning Coffee.